Sup, boys? So I think that Physical Kaeya is probably the most free-to-play friendly character to build in the game and get a lot of benefit out of it. Kaeya has a really good toolkit for having physical damage on top of having cryo damage, and if you can pair him with a Electro character to induct Superconduct, you'll end up getting a reduction in physical defense and you can just kind of go ham. So the whole idea behind this team is basically we want to have Kaeya as our main damage dealer. He's going to be the main DPS. He's going to be dealing a ton of physical damage, and he's going to have cryo packed into his kit as well. Then after that, I would definitely focus on an Electro character. I've tried it with both Fischl and Beto as my Electro characters. For what it's worth, Lisa could probably do just fine here. I just didn't use her. I think that because Superconduct isn't going to have a ton of knockback whenever it actually procs, it's not going to be a huge deal like as if we were doing Overload, because the characters aren't going to necessarily get pushed around too much with Superconduct, so it's pretty safe to use Lisa with her burst. I chose both Fischl and Beto to kind of play around with and test. There are ups and downs to both of them. The way that Fischl actually applies Electro, it's going to be a weak application, which means that if we do end up hitting our elemental skill with Kaeya and we induct Superconduct, it's not going to completely remove the cryo element from them, which means we could end up getting more elemental procs if we wanted to, swap into a pyro unit and hit melt or something like that. We could end up getting both Superconduct and melt off relatively easy. Whereas if you have Beto, her elemental skill is a stronger application. It's actually the same amount of gauge units as Kaeya, so you end up canceling both out and you'll end up consuming all of the cryo instead. At least to me, it feels like the burst from Beto feels smoother to play rather than Fischl, because having to switch to Fischl to summon Oz if you already have the elemental skill on cooldown to get Oz back on the field with her burst, it does feel a little bit clunky to me, but there's ups and downs to both. I like Fischl because it allows more elemental reactions to happen, but I like Beto because it feels smoother for Kaeya. Then after that, I really think that you could pretty much use anybody here. I chose Xinyan because her shield actually allows a little bit of extra physical damage, and I chose Bennett because we already had a pyro character. We were just going to do two pyro characters. You could also go with another cryo character in here if you would want extra crit rate or something like that. Just be careful because Chongyun himself will end up converting a lot of stuff with his elemental skill. Dione is actually really good here. I do actually like her a lot for this team. And then, any other cryo characters, Ganyu would work fine. I kind of feel like she would take over in the DPS category, so Kaeya kind of is going to get outshadowed there. Chi-Chi would be a great option. Unfortunately, I don't have her, but I think that she would also work pretty well. Or if you're more into the Anemo side of things, any of the Anemo characters would work really well. Any of the Geo characters work just fine. So as far as the individual characters go, so basically the way that I would suggest that you build Kaeya for this is going to be with 2-piece Bloodstain, 2-piece Gladiator's Finale. You could go with a full 4-piece of Gladiator's Finale. I personally just have him set up on 2 pieces of each because I do actually have the prototype Rancor on him with physical damage bonus. It's going to make him look pretty stacked in this category. 111 on the physical damage bonus, which is nice. And pretty much after that, it's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to have 2 pieces of each. Of course, you want best substats that you can get on them. Have a physical damage goblet with, the best substats that you can get, and you should be squared away on your main DPS. Now you'll notice 1600 attack is pretty hefty, and Kaeya actually does pretty well with it. For the Electro character, I basically chose to put all of my elemental mastery into the Electro character. For the optimal setup, I would actually use Kaeya's elemental skill and then use my Electro character to proc the Superconduct. So that's just the way that I've been playing it, which means the elemental mastery makes more sense to go on the Electro characters, whether it was Beto or Fischl for me, it didn't really matter. But as long as they were the ones applying the Superconduct, it actually worked out pretty well. Fischl basically is set up with the Stringless for the extra elemental mastery, and she actually does have 2-piece Thundering Fury for the Electro bonus and 2-piece Wanderer's Troupe for the extra elemental mastery, and she is actually just built to help do more damage with Superconduct. And the fact that Oz can stay on the field, I feel like this is also where I like having Fischl a little bit more than Beto, because Oz can just sit there and continuously apply Electro, pending his internal cooldowns and stuff. He can apply the Electro relatively well and help us do a lot more superconduct. And as long as we're rotating our cryo application and doing stuff like that, it makes it pretty smooth. As you can see here, we just have, you know, a little bit of Electro bonus. Energy recharge should be a lot better because her burst is kind of hefty, but yeah, she works. And then for the last two characters that I used, Xinyan, her elemental skill is literally here just to apply 15% increased physical damage. That's the only reason I'm really using her, but it actually worked out pretty nice in some situations where I would apply Electro and then be able to do extra damage with some overload or something like that. Or if I'm in a situation where Kaeya has applied cryo and I want to do the melt like we were talking about earlier, that actually works out really well. She is rocking the Bloodstain because of the elemental mastery, and then she is just kind of rocking a bunch of mismatch stuff apparently. Oh, I switched this because I was messing around in Abyss earlier. This is probably a little bit more in line of what you should be using for her. I do have her built for a ton of crit damage just because I do have C2, which means that her burst is always going to crit whenever it hits. So I just have a bunch of crit damage placed on her, and then physical damage because you could either do physical damage or pyro. Just kind of depends. If she's going to be the melt procer, then elemental mastery makes a ton of sense and probably would want to go more pyro damage than physical damage, but it just kind of depends on what you ultimately want with her. And last but not least, we have our faithful Bennett. I need to start not being so handicapped by Bennett, but Bennett is basically going to not be using a black sword. Again, sorry, I was playing around in Abyss. He probably would want to have Festering Desire or Sacrificial Sword. Either one is fine. Favonia's Sword also works. Basically, we're just looking for energy recharge here just to be able to pop his burst off even more often. As far as artifacts go, I have him set up with a full 4-piece of Noblesse just to help be a support. Basically, you just want to have his base attack as high as possible, and you want to have his HP as high as possible. I actually have an HP goblet on him simply to help him do better heals. And then outside of that, he's basically going to apply melt. So any kind of elemental mastery that you have on him is great. I do actually like having a lot of elemental mastery on him so that when it applies melt, it does get that bonus. But other than that, he's pretty much our, you know, buffer and our healer all in one. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the team. It's basically setting up Kaeya to have as much attack, as much physical damage as possible. Xinyan was kind of clunky at some times. I did feel like she was a little bit weird. Maybe if, I don't know necessarily if the extra attack is more beneficial or if the extra crit rate would be more beneficial between the resonances. I think that would ultimately kind of be up to you and what your substats look like and stuff like that. But I do think that Xinyan was a little bit odd at times, and her shield was kind of hard to keep up just because I didn't have her built to maximize her shield. But I think you could kind of play around with a couple of these spots, but this is just kind of a starting off point and something that I hope that you could build on top of and kind of take it in your own direction. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for today, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's little team idea. Just to clarify, this isn't supposed to be like, oh my god, super omega OP, look at this setup. That was never the intention with any of these videos that I've been making about teams. They're just ideas to get you started thinking about different teams that you would want to make and hopefully get you kind of jogging the old brain to kick in. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm kind of rambling. Anyways, see ya. Major shout out to Cherry Blue, who is a YouTube member.